We'll get going. Welcome everyone to the Crowne Plaza on this lovely Saturday evening. So first, just some housekeeping points. As you know, there are refreshments available here in the room, and after the launch we'll be moving downstairs to the 14th below bar, where there'll be food and beverages will be served and hopefully consumed. Please take a note of the exit. And in the unlikely event of a fire, be sure to make your way to the nearest exit in an orderly fashion, and also be sure to buy some books on your way out, even more important. In the event that there's no fire, nobody can leave the room until I stop talking. So we'll, just a few hours, it'll fly by. So anyway, down to business. Welcome to the launch of Bitter Angel Blues. We're here to launch the second novel. It's a follow-up to the previous novel, Talking Squirrel Blues. So first of all, don't be alarmed. There's a lot of pages in the speech here, but don't get too worried. I had to increase the font size because my eyes, they're not getting older, but the letters are getting smaller every day and fuzzier. So anyway, it's taken me a while to write this book. Those of you who were at the previous book launch will know exactly how many years it's taken me to finish this one. But I did set myself deadlines while I was working on it. Finishing it before I die was one such deadline. In retrospect, my deadlines were probably a little bit loose. To paraphrase Peter Houston, not only did he set himself ridiculously low targets, he then failed to reach them. But it wasn't for lack of motivation or enthusiasm or talent. Well, it wasn't for lack of motivation or enthusiasm anyway. I always had the end game in sight. I'm a great believer in the power of visualization. So long before I'd even finished the first draft of the book, I was already visualizing what this book launch would look like. And it looked exactly like this evening, actually. Well, almost. In my vision, I was wearing an Armani suit. I had a Rolex watch and a six-pack and amazing hair. So anyway, 1 out of 4 isn't too bad. I was even writing the book launch speech before I had finished writing the bloody book. So anyway, I finally reached the end of the book. All endings, of course, start at a beginning. And this particular journey started at a writing workshop in Dublin a few years ago. I'd finished my previous book and I was keen to take 2 of the characters from that book on their own journey of destruction and self-discovery. So as part of that writing workshop, we had to write a scene for a novel that we were working on, or in my case, possibly thinking about perhaps working on someday maybe. Someday maybe is probably my favourite phrase in the English language because it's so full of hope and possibility without the annoying need to actually do anything. So the scene I workshopped that day eventually found itself in the eventually finished novel. So before going on with the speech, I'd just like to share that scene with you now. In this scene, Tiffany, the main character in the book, she's talking to her nephew, Robin. And Tiffany has her eyes on Robin's gym teacher, and she wants Robin to help her organise a date. So Tiffany prided herself on understanding her nephew, Robin, very well. Indeed, they had a special bond. He often declared that she was his favourite aunt. Of course, the only competition was George's sister, Muriel, a cocaine-addled exotic dancer who worked the corporate entertainment circuit and went by the name Juanita. By comparison, Tiffany was an eminently suitable role model for the boy. So sitting at the kitchen table on a warm Sunday morning, Tiffany plotted her next move. Robin needed her help, and Tiffany needed Robin's help. So this was only going to end one way. We all have someone we like in this world, don't we, Robin? Tiffany started off innocently enough. Like, isn't there some girl at school that you're mooning about these days? I think you said her name was Leadbelly. No, her name's Letitia, Robin corrected his aunt. But we all call her Lettuce. Lettuce, Okay, Tiffany couldn't think of anything nice to say about that, except why on earth do you call her lettuce? Oh, you know what teenagers are like. Robin spoke with the weary wisdom of an ancient sage and then scratched his acne. They have to make a skit out of absolutely everything. Look, just because Letitia isn't the liveliest person in the class, and she doesn't always dress in the most colourful clothes, and she walks around looking like a nun in an abandoned abbey, look, I see something in her that nobody else sees. That's very interesting, Tiffany said. She had already planted the seed. Well, what I see in front of me at the moment is 2 lumps of coal on this table. No, that's not coal, Robin explained as he rummaged through his school bag. Those are cookies or buns or cakes or whatever Mum attempted to cook last night. Okay, Robin, what are you digging for in that mangy school bag there? I need to ask you something, Tiffany. It's about gym class. Now, Tiffany knew that Robin hated gym class. His physique was more suited to the library or the mortuary. But Tiffany had to consider the wider picture. In particular, she had to consider the gym teacher. So what's going on about the gym then, she asked her nephew. I don't want to go to gym class tomorrow. Robin rarely bothered lying to his aunt. He saved all his lies for his mother. So Tiffany, can you write me a sick note? Well, you don't look very sick to me, Tiffany argued. No sicker than usual anyway. And why can't you ask your mother to write the note? Well, can we not just keep it our little secret? Robin protested. He handed Tiffany a sheet of paper and a well-chewed pen. Like, why does Mum have to know about everything? Well, I'm not very comfortable lying to your mother, Tiffany lied, especially on a Sunday morning on her way out to Mass. Well, why not, Robin said. We all lie to her. That's the only way we can survive in this house. So Tiffany understood Robin's situation, and in Robin's problem, she saw her opportunity. So you want me to write a note to your gym teacher so you don't have to go to gym class? Yes, finally you understand. Now will you do it? Remind me, Robin, is your gym teacher married? No, I don't think so. Robin considered this. I actually can't imagine anyone wanting to share their life with him. He just wants to share his life with the gym. He even gives yoga classes in the gym in the evenings. Oh, really? I absolutely love yoga. Tiffany despises yoga. I should go to his class. See, everything works out. You have your lettuce and I have my gym teacher. Tiffany, are you going to write the note or not? Robin, are you going to introduce me to your gym teacher or not? They stared at each other, neither one willing to make the next move. Not just yet. Robin picked up one of the mysterious burnt delicacies from the table and began chewing it slowly, his eyes never leaving his aunt. Tiffany stood up and picked up the other burnt offering, maintaining steely eye contact with her nephew. If I don't write that note, Robin, you have to go to gym class. Tiffany sniffed the specimen and then flung it in the bin. And then you'll end up in a worse state than that poor cake there. So, are you ready to make a deal? Why do I have to introduce you to my sodding gym teacher? Robin asked, his mouth still full of burnt debris. All he ever does is scream and yell at me, and then Robin suddenly stopped talking and began beating his chest. Oh, what's with this Tarzan routine? Tiffany inquired. You turning blue isn't going to convince me to write that note any faster, Robin. Robin was desperately struggling to catch his breath as the chewed cake refused to dislodge itself from his throat. He grasped the side of the table, sweat now pouring down his forehead. Oh, are you choking, Robin? Tiffany knew enough about first aid to recognise the signs. I tell you, it's a good job that I know the Heimlich manoeuvre. Relief washed over Robin's face. He stared at his aunt, this angel who would now use the Heimlich manoeuvre to dislodge the damn cake from his throat and stop him from choking to death. Tiffany continued to stare at her choking nephew. She began wondering, why was it called the Heimlich manoeuvre anyway? Well, obviously Heimlich must have been involved in it somewhere. Maybe he was the guy who was choking. Or was he the guy who saved the other guy from choking? Meanwhile, Robin continued to choke in front of her. "You're turning a very unusual colour there, Robin," Tiffany remarked as she sat back down in the chair. "I wonder why that is." Robin's eyes grew wider as he felt the grip of death begin to wrap around him. He tried to beg his aunt to hurry up and save him, but all he could do was gasp desperately as his eyes watered up. "So, Robin, are you going to introduce me to your gym teacher?" Tiffany asked, gazing nonchalantly out the window. As he slid down to his knees, barely able to breathe, Robin realised that he'd never be the negotiator that his aunt was. Mere seconds away from death, he nodded weakly, indicating his willingness to agree unconditionally to all her terms. "Okay, thank you, Robin," Tiffany said, finally standing up. "Now let's get rid of that cake from your throat." So that was the first scene that I wrote, and that was as far as I got with the novel for a few years. But a woman who is willing to let her nephew choke to death just so she can go on a date with his gym teacher is certainly going to keep my attention. So as the years lurched by, whenever I had bunches of time, I returned to Tiffany and I told a bit more of her story. But needless to say, life kept getting in the way. I kept getting distracted. Life kept throwing things at me. Or as John Lennon famously put it, I am the walrus. There were always things to do, places to go, people to see, music to listen to, salads to eat. Yeah, right. Like the White Rabbit, I seemed to be always on the move, forever late for an important date, and the book kept getting pushed further and further down my to-do list, until it was clinging by its fingernails to the very bottom of the page. So one night a few years ago, when I probably should have been doing something more important, I was watching the sun set in all its tangerine glory. And I was thinking to myself how the sun was always on time. It never missed the deadline. It was never welded to the bed in the morning. If I was a little bit less distracted by life, distracted by endless stuff, maybe I could be a bit more like the sun. Reliable, punctual, hot, and a little bit fiery. And then I might get the bloody book finished. So I looked up into the darkening clouds and I said, God, I know we're not always on speaking terms, and I know I only call you whenever I need something, but I really, really, really want to finish this book. And I'm just so distracted by everything you keep throwing in my path. So, if it's not too much to ask, could you maybe possibly, shut down the entire world for just a few months? Then I promise to apply myself and I will finish the book. What do you think? Do we have a deal? So be careful what you pray for. When the pandemic lockdown began to take hold, I realised that I had finally run out of excuses and it was time to finish the bloody book. But of course, even during a lockdown, no writer works alone. And there's a few people I need to thank for bringing all this to a conclusion. First of all, the Crowne Plaza for the lovely facilities here this evening. Also to Margaret Ruddy, Ian Coogan and Ken Finnegan from the Argus for the publicity. To Ken Drakeford for doing the cover illustration. And to Emma Dunn for doing the editing of the final book. The book is dedicated to my late Uncle Sean, who was at the previous book launch in Dundalk. And when I asked him a few months later what he thought of the book, he told me it was good crack. And I kind of thought, you can't ask for a better review than that. So I'm going to finish up now with a short scene, good luck with that, from the novel. So now Tiffany, through her various machinations, has managed to get herself the date with Carl, the gym teacher. And their first date is about as successful as every other first date in history. So Tiffany was glad that Carl had chosen the Loose Leaf Cafe. They could enjoy some food and a chat without it feeling like they were on a proper date. So there were no candles or no nosy waiters hanging around to give the wrong impression. Just food and chat, especially food, because as she walked through the door, Tiffany realised that she was absolutely starving. And with slight irritation, she noticed that Carl was already seated at the table. That didn't give her any time to compose herself, so she made a promise to herself to be early for the next date with Carl. Ah yes, Carl. He did look particularly perfect this evening. He was very well groomed, perhaps a little bit too well groomed. He was his well-shaven face exuded the fresh glow of healthy living or very expensive moisturiser. Carl looked up and smiled the Tom Cruise beam when he saw Tiffany. And Tiffany tried to reciprocate with a Julia Roberts dazzler, but it felt stiff and awkward on her lips. Sorry I'm late, she said. I ran into an old friend. Oh, no problem at all. Carl continued to grin as he looked at his wristwatch/health monitor. Tiffany wasn't sure whether he was trying to ascertain exactly how late she was or checking his heartbeat. We can relax now, he said. Tiffany noticed that Carl somehow managed to make the word relax sound like hard work, like a goal that had to be pursued with single-minded determination. So Tiffany sat down, trying to relax and marshal her scattered thoughts. She glanced at the menu. Shall we order? Tiffany suggested, noticing that Carl was now tapping complex diagrams on his watch. Looking at the menu, Tiffany remembered that this was a health food cafe. She searched in vain for something nice on the menu. I hope you don't mind, Carl said, unleashing yet another blinding grin that allowed absolutely no room for minding one way or the other. I've already ordered for myself. Oh, Tiffany said. And what on earth did you order? She was curious to find out how Carl had managed to find anything appetizing on this menu. Well, I ordered the Mediterranean salad and a sparkling water, Carl said, with a slice of lemon because I was in the mood to treat myself. Ha ha ha. Tiffany, on the other hand, was in the mood for a double cheeseburger with garlic chips and a side order of pizza. However, she resigned herself to some vague sort of soup dish. It appeared to be as organic and self-righteous as an early morning farmer's market. Anyway, never mind, she could sneak off to the takeaway on the way home. So Tiffany gave her order to the waiter. No, of course, a glass of sparkling water is fine for me too. And she looked for ways to fill the silence before their food arrived. So looking for a neutral subject and trying to avoid staring into the Caribbean depths of Carl's eyes and rapt devotion, Tiffany mentioned that she'd been talking to Robin earlier that day. Oh, how is he? Carl asked. We really do need to find some ways to build him up. I mean, his frame is rather delicate, isn't it? Oh yes, I've seen sturdier jellyfish, Tiffany agreed. And his brain is rather delicate too, isn't it? I mean, of course, he's been slowly starved to death because his mother can't cook anything. I mean, that woman could burn an ice cube. Yes, I must talk to him about nutrition, Carl continued. He really does need to be eating proper food. Well, I'd say he'd be delighted if he got properly cooked food at this stage, Tiffany answered. Yes, but we do have to be very careful about what we eat, don't we? Carl's voice was beginning to quiver a little bit with passion as he entered into his favourite subject. We can all change our eating habits at any time, no matter how far we have let ourselves go. Tiffany recoiled slightly from the implication. However, Carl's smile was as perfectly curled as ever, so she had to assume that there was no malice in his words, for now. The food finally arrived, and the soup appeared to be a lukewarm, muddy liquid with a sprinkling of indeterminate vegetable slices, seeds, bulbs, pips, and plastic. She sniffed it, searching in vain for a nice aroma. Oh wow, that soup looks amazing, Carl nodded to the soup. Tasty and nutritious. Yes, it tastes really good, Tiffany lied, repressing the sudden urge to vomit as she swallowed the first tentative spoon of the soup. I don't think I've ever tasted anything quite like it. It's really interesting, Carl explained between enthusiastic munches of his multi-green Mediterranean salad, how our bodies instinctively like the taste of food that is good for us. Oh yes, indeed, Tiffany agreed, still battling her increasingly demanding urge to vomit. I must get the recipe for this soup. Oh, you don't even need a recipe, Carl continued, clearly delighted to have such an easy opening into his favourite topic of conversation. Sometimes you just have to listen to your body. When we mindfully prepare our food, our bodies react to the potential nourishment and almost automatically guide us to the right ingredients to satisfy our Are you full already, Tiffany? You've stopped eating. No, I'm just taking a moment to savour the taste. Tiffany was busy fantasising about lasagna. It's really difficult to eat healthily all the time though, Carl, isn't it? No, not at all. The pitch in Carl's voice had crept up a notch. A few other diners glanced over at him in bemusement. It's actually very easy if we make the proper effort. If we get lazy or careless, of course, we'll fail. After all, it's the complacent antelope, the one that can't resist just one more small little Irish breakfast that gets eaten by the lion. Of course, Tiffany was now thinking about Irish breakfasts. And at this point, she would have gladly murdered every single diner in the cafe for a few sausages and maybe a slab of black pudding. Carl had paused in his speech in order to focus on his salad again. He chewed carefully and oh so slowly, not letting any of the leaves or stalks protrude from his lips. Are you chewing the cud? Tiffany inquired, with as much levity as her increasing impatience would allow. Carl took the hint and swallowed the salad in a smooth, burp-free motion. I do like to eat mindfully, he explained. It's important to thoroughly savour the taste and to chew the food very carefully before swallowing it. I see, Tiffany said, wondering exactly what taste there was to savour in a bloody salad. Are you not going to finish your soup? Carl inquired. Oh, maybe not, Tiffany said. I find that I fill up quite quickly when the food is this good. You know, Carl continued, having finally chewed and swallowed the last of the salad leaves, I could help you with your nutrition problems. My what? Tiffany tried to regain control of her offended eyebrows. The problem isn't my nutrition, Carl. As I've explained, my sister's cooking is the problem. In fact, actually, I think I make quite good choices when it comes to food. Tiffany was beginning to suspect that she'd actually made quite a bad choice when she agreed to go on this bloody date. Carl took a slow sip of water before proceeding with due caution. Well, we're all responsible for our own choices, Tiffany. Carl was clearly developing his pitch, but we often need some guidance to help us make the right choices, a bit of direction, a mentor even. Hold on now, not all of my choices have been catastrophic, Tiffany argued, trying not to think of her ex-boyfriend. I've actually made a lot of good choices. For example, I regularly walk in the hills. Yes, I suppose that's a good start, Carl amiably conceded. But, you need a regular routine with regular nutrition. It's a hill. Tiffany wasn't sure why she was feeling so defensive. It's hard work. Yes, Carl agreed, and hard work, of course, makes us stronger. Carl was beginning to get evangelical again, oblivious to the annoyed glances from the other diners. I tell you what, Tiffany, I could put together a health regime for you, incorporating fitness and nutrition, and of course some meditation to smooth out your sharp edges. I do that for a lot of my clients. Tiffany suddenly wasn't sure whether this was a date or a sales pitch. Clients? She asked, her eyebrows quivering again. Okay, that's very interesting. I suppose that's a nice offer, but to be honest, I'm not sure whether I'm ready to take that sort of plunge. Now, Tiffany, if you want to change your life, Carl insisted, staring straight into her eyes, you must commit to change. So, Tiffany, are you ready to commit? Tiffany smiled and sipped her water. She knew right then that she certainly wasn't ready to commit to Carl. Maybe it was time to commit to somebody else. Anybody else. Sinead, thank you. Okie doke.